Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Fire Warrior Stark, and as I'm sure you guys are all aware, this is the free-to-play collab unit that we're being given by Smallgate. Now, honestly, his kit looks pretty solid or pretty interesting, but of course we'll have to kind of wait and see in terms of what he does. However, whether or not he's just a PvE or a PvP unit, let's find out today. Without further ado though, let's get into it. So, the first thing we should talk about when it comes to Stark is his stats. He's got a decent amount of attack for a warrior. He's definitely got pretty high HP, as he has 7,300 base, and he has a decent amount of speed with basically nothing else in his kit. Now, that said, it is also worth mentioning that although most characters can obviously scale higher with self-imprint HP, Stark, and the reason why I think most people will be building him as a DPS, obviously has critical hit chance, which is decent, I guess, but honestly kind of endangering to your bookmarks or endangering to your slates, as Freeran, as we've already seen, also has critical hit chance. Now, as we move further, the first thing we should talk about is his skill 2, as honestly most of these characters' skill 2s are pretty crazy. Now, Stark's S2 is that when an ally gets attacked, he gains 10 fighting spirit, and when fighting spirit is full, he activates Warrior Strike on the attacker. Now, Warrior Strike attacks the enemy consecutively, increases the combat readiness of the caster by 50, and also resets his skill 3, and the damage here increases proportional to the caster's max HP. Now, as far as we've seen just from this kind of already puts Stark in an HP scaly type deal. However, what's most interesting here is the idea of resetting an ability just from basically having allies get attacked. Now, this can obviously or may incentivize you to start hitting Stark, but as I'm sure we'll probably use on a character like Stark, we'll probably end up using something like, I don't know, maybe counter set. Maybe we'll try to make him fast so he can get off more abilities. Anything like this is probably fine. Now, in terms of this, it is worth mentioning that when you see the damage dealt from this skill, it's not amazing. Okay, so first and foremost, a bit of context. There is an Ilanov here. Okay, she does have her passive sealed, however, and, well, she does have Indomitable, or rather, I should say Aeufine does have Indomitable. Now, this Aeufine does look to be pretty tanky. It's got 20,000 HP, which you can't really see too much down here, but just in general, all these stats aside, and even though Stark has his attack down, he has his max, presumably, artifact. It's Jumbo Berry Special, and we'll talk about it later, but this damage against a character that's defense broken, this is, again, a character that's already defense broken, has, as far as I could tell, no Aureus sharing here, otherwise we would have seen it, and it wasn't able to kill a half-health defense broken Abyssal Eufine that has 21,000 HP. Now, in all honesty, you could just write this off as like, well, the S2 isn't going to do an insane amount of damage, but I just wanted to point out that it is kind of baffling for any damage dealing ability in the game to not kill a defense broken character when they're below half health. That said, again, it is what it is. That's not super important, as again, I'm sure most people's main attraction or main affinity or main care for Stark's abilities is going to be in his skill 3, as we've kind of seen and teased. Now, Stark's S3 reads that you attack the enemy by slamming down with an axe. It pens the target's defense by 50%. This scales specifically with the caster's max HP as well, and the damage that you deal each time the skill is used stacks up to 3 times. You can soul burn this to do a bunch of damage, and overall, you're right if you assume that Stark is pretty simple, but probably going to be effective, whether that's for some sort of DPS contest or whether that's for some sort of PvE, maybe even a guild war where you run him super tanky. It is what it is. That said, when you actually take a look at the damage that this ability does, first, I do want to say, for whatever case or for whatever reason, they decided to show him with like an attack down the whole time. Obviously, every skill or most skills in the game scale with some sort of attack, but obviously Stark deals primarily HP based damage, so this shouldn't be such a huge debuff. But when you take a look at the damage that he deals here, this is, first off, cool animation. With Rage, again, I know like the attack isn't supposed to be amazing or whatever. This first soul burn doing 6,118 damage without an Aureus is not insane. Now, okay, I will say, not every character or not every single tank in the game should one-shot, because that would be absolutely bonkers. However, as we'll mention and talk about in a moment, this character also just doesn't really have that much in his kit. Yes, he does have a provoke on his S1, which is a 100% as far as I can see, and this also scales with the caster's max HP, but that's basically it for Stark's kit. Now, to be fair as well, this is a Jumbo Berry special equipping or having Stark, and with this, his damage does increase by 20%, which is also, by the way, a pretty decent artifact, which I'm sure we'll probably get for free. However, in terms of the value, or I think we should at least from an event, if not, don't hold me to this, but I would assume this is the case. However, in terms of the actual damage that Stark deals, this is maybe not the most insane showcase of DPS that I've ever seen. Now, of course, there aren't like an insane amount of HP scaling or HP buffing DPS characters in the game, and at most, and as you're seeing right now, you will get something like a defense break, and that's kind of how you'll buff the damage of an HP scaler. However, I would imagine, or in my eyes, having an attack or a damage increase artifact like the Jumbo Berry itself is already kind of justification enough for it kind of dealing or for you to probably be dealing a little bit or a decent amount of damage itself. Now, there is also obviously an Archdemon Mercedes here, but Stark here getting hit and being able to take his turn, cool, interesting. Obviously, you do kind of have to get hit, or your allies kind of have to get hit by a decent amount of AoEs in order for you to really abuse this Stark passive, at least from the way it looks. But, I mean, as you're seeing here, to consume, or for you to use 10 souls, and for you to do like 6,000, 7,000 damage to an Ilanov is not necessarily the most inspiring thing I've ever seen. Now, again, it's a showcase, it's a Smilegate showcase more specifically, and whether or not this damage is reflective of actually how much damage you'll do, kind of hard to say, but I would probably imagine that this is either going to be a character that ends up using something like Counter Set, ends up using, I don't know, something like Durandal to take turns, or may just be like a base speed and just pray that you counter into infinity and everyone gives you like a combat readiness push. But in any case, all these scenarios kind of don't glorify Stark the way that I think he, or I'm sure many people probably wanted him to be. Now, of course, he is free, and that is probably a big reason for why he's not the most insane or complicated character that I've ever seen. But in terms of this, it is worth mentioning that though I didn't want to talk about it too much in Freeren's specific collab showcase breakdown, this additional 40% increase, or if you get 40% increase from Freeren being paired with Stark, I do think that the two can probably cook a decent amount. However, whether or not Freeren would want to be paired with Stark as opposed to all the other insane characters that we've seen, including characters like Famir, Commander Pavel, Remnant Violet, like the list goes on and on, there's probably a decent argument for Freeren being paired with anyone but Stark, and she or her doing way better. However, I do want to say that, again, whether or not we can actually see a respectable DPS or a respectable one-shot from Stark is kind of up for debate, especially since in the current like state or in the current affair of things, we've kind of got Genesis Roz one-shotting everything in sight. So it feels like the bar has been set extremely high, and if you're not something like New Kid Aiden, or you're not an Abyssal, or not an Abyssal Euphine, or if you're not an Afternoon Soak Flan or a Bloodblade Karen, you've kind of got a lot of competition for the DPS slot nowadays. And whether or not a character that basically gets countered in most cases probably by like a water unit can really show up is going to be up for debate. However, again, I think that when put together, there is a good chance that you will be able to use someone like Freeren, and I'm sure Fern and Stark all together. But at least from what we've seen right now, his damage looks okay. There doesn't appear to be like an amazing like pairing duo sort of character outside of Freeren that makes it seem like, oh wow, like, and here's all the, you know, here's all the value that you would get from like pairing this character with like an HP scaler. Like, there really doesn't exist that in the game currently. And as you're saying as well, like Stark, like all other HP scalers in the game, also get countered by injury, so it does feel a little bit weird. Whether or not, of course, you're going to be fighting against injury every game is completely up for debate, but like, even look at that. Again, I understand that there is like an Ilanov, if I'm not exactly, I keep forgetting whether or not this Ilanov seal gets rid of her pen. I'm pretty sure it does. If it doesn't, regardless, like, that is a defense broken character, and yes, she does have indomitable will, but like Stark had rage, dueled, and like didn't one shot an abyssal U-feed. Like it, okay, I guess. Oh, actually, wait, there was an Aureus here for, I mean, I guess there was an Aureus here for the Fallen Cecilia, but I don't know. Just in general, when I see this, like, you know, when you're trying to pass the eye test in terms of how insane a DPS is, if you aren't able to kill something or like put significant pressure on a character, like on a team that's like sealed, burning, has silences, and you're not able to one-shot something with like, I don't know, any sort of duel or any sort of damage, it just feels a bit concerning. Though obviously I'm sure that if Stark were to use his S3 on this target, he would absolutely obliterate the abyssal U-fiend. That said, I think my point still stands. His damage by no means seems insane. Of course, he may do a little bit more damage if you get one of the RTA rolled buffs. But in general, just because of how I think simplistic his kit looks, I don't think this is the most insane number one showcase of a character that we've ever seen. And maybe, you know, I could be wrong. We could definitely see a stronger Stark in the future from a future showcase or from the units that people actually build. However, just from what we've seen, Stark's kit looks solid, maybe usable in some sort of green type activity. But otherwise, I'm sure people just love the fact that they got him for free. He's cool, and I'm sure you'll get imprints for him as well. Oh, yeah, actually, well, I don't know, actually. They might change this, but presumably if you get a max copy Stark, that would be amazing, obviously, especially considering he's a critical hit chance self-imprint character. However, again, whether or not his damage is super insane, I'd say probably not. And again, he has no real way to stop himself even from being debuffed. I mean, just look here, right? He doesn't cleanse himself. He's like very vulnerable, or it can easily be like locked up or provoked. There, he finally killed her, and I mean, 9,000 damage with an attack down. I guess that's okay. That's pretty decent. But again, I don't know. There's probably a more interesting or more insane bruiser or anchor that you could use in the game. No hate again to Stark. I wish only the best for this character. I hope that there's a cook or there's like a chef. Maybe people use some crazy set or some pairing with him and he ends up being insane. But at least from what I've seen, guys, I think Stark is okay. Decent at best. Probably a trophy husband at worst. But otherwise, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Good luck to all you Stark lovers or pullers, and well, I doubt you're gonna pull for Stark, but if you're gonna imprint him or if you're gonna build him up, good luck. And yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video. I'll see you all in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.